So let's talk about organizational structure. And in a typical organization, there are two things that flow from people to people. One is responsibility, and the other is communication or information. And the organizational chart, which was developed at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and we're still using it today because it has value. You've probably seen the organizational chart with boxes and arrows and dotted lines and fun stuff like that. The reason that we still use it is it's a good graphic representation of authority and communication. Some of the trends in organization structure, one, we're getting to much flatter organizations. The reason that the traditional organization chart was developed at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution was because a human being can't realistically manage more than, say, 15 people. So the idea was if you have 1,000 people who are working, then every 15 of those need a supervisor, and every 15 supervisors need a manager, and every 15 managers need a vice president, and every 15 vice presidents need but that's where the organization structure came from. And because a lot of what that was all about was just the flow of information, the digital age has eliminated the need for lots of those middle layers of management. Is I don't need to get a progress report from my frontline supervisor. I can just read what's happening in the real-time progress on the computer. So less so much the communication of information, but the implementation of strategy and monitoring progress is really what it's all about. The other trend is trying to put decision-making authority as close to the customer as possible. There is a famous one of the ways that organizations transmit culture is through the telling of stories and legends. And one of the most famous corporate legends is the Nordstrom tire story. Anybody heard the Nordstrom tire story? Okay, how many times have you heard the Nordstrom tire? Say again?
It just doesn't go together.
It just doesn't go together?
Yeah,
Yeah, Nordstrom and tires. And the Nordstrom tire story is that a customer came into Nordstrom's, wanted to return a set of tires. And the clerk accepted the return and gave the customer the money back. Now, if your employee did that, what would you do? You find an employment at a tire store because that's what I think you like to do. What happened at Nordstrom's is they celebrated that person because customer service was more important. We would rather lose some money on a refund than call a customer wrong. And actually what happened is that particular store used to be a tire store, and the customer had actually bought the tires from that physical location. So the customer thought they were doing well. But that has become legend, and in the Nordstrom culture, when you're trying to talk about how we deal with our customers, again, the decision-making authority close to customers, and then as managers, we need to accept that if there are mistakes, you need to allow for errors, yes. And the other thing is flexible organizations. There's a new concept out there called agile development. Rather than having a formal strategic plan and setting 4 and 5 years goals, we have smaller teams working on incremental improvements to our processes, and some work, some don't, and over time we end up finding much better processes, and our product, our outcome, our process is continually improving. Okay. So this is what a typical organization structure looks like. You got the boss on top, you got the subordinates below. A typical marketing organization would look something like this, where you've got the marketing officer and then the various areas in marketing reporting to the marketing officer. And then there's different ways of structuring the marketing organization. With a geographic structure, you might want to organize on a geographic region. In this instance, I have sales and distribution are organized geographically, but marketing is done still at the corporate level. And that chart tells me that. Because you can see sales have got region, And the idea would be that if I want to be close to my customers, it makes sense to locate my sales force physically close to customers, and it makes sense to locate distribution physically close to customers. But in this instant, the customers aren't that different that I would want to have different marketing campaigns for each customer. Another kind of approach is product structure. This is what many brand management companies take. Is rather than having a marketing organization and a field organization, I might have a separate marketing organization for different products, thinking that different products have different needs, different customers, different channels of distribution. It would make sense to set up a separate marketing organization for each product line. And then customer structure, again, looking at in this situation, it's not uncommon to have, for example, national accounts and smaller accounts. When we talked about sales, about A, B, C accounts. An A account is the 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business, and the C accounts are accounts that may or may not be profitable for you, but you still keep them on. So the idea here is if the customer needs are so different, it might make sense to have different marketing structures to support each. So for example, with spark plugs, I might have an OEM division, original equipment division, which works with manufacturers to supply spark plugs. I might have a retail division, and then just various customer institutions might have a government division where I contract with government authorities. You get the picture, literally the picture.